Or are they the forgotten women of the Bible who changed everything? When we think about the great deeds in the Bible, it's common for names like Moses, David, Elijah, or Solomon to come to mind. But what about them? Where are the women of the Bible who, even working behind the scenes, played a decisive role in the course of sacred history? The truth is, many of these biblical female figures have been silenced over time not because they lacked courage, faith, or wisdom, but because they lived in a society that didn't see them as protagonists. There were women in the Bible who saved cities, advised kings, prophesied, fought, and led, yet they are often remembered in just a few lines of a chapter or not at all. Some have been completely forgotten in sermons, Bible studies, and even art. But if the story had been told by them, maybe we'd see the Bible from a whole new angle, more real, more complete. This video is an invitation to make room for these forgotten women of the Bible, to give a voice to those who lived in silence, to reveal the strength behind gentleness, the authority behind faith, the leadership hidden in humility. These were strong women prophetesses, leaders, warriors, even queens who left their mark, yet barely anyone talks about them. If you've ever wondered why we hear so much about the kings of the Bible but almost nothing about their wives, counselors, or the prophetesses by their side, then this content is for you. Today, we're going to reveal what few have the courage to say: these women didn't just participate, they changed the course of biblical history. Get ready. By the end of this video, you'll see with new eyes those women who were used by God in strategic, powerful, and essential ways, 7 when the world insisted on ignoring them. Because every story has two sides. And today, we're going to listen to theirs. From the earliest chapters of the Old Testament, we can see that the world of the Bible was built around a patriarchal society. Men ruled, legislated, and dominated the spotlight in nearly every account. And women, when they did something remarkable, were usually mentioned only in passing if they were named at all. This cultural background shaped centuries of interpretation. And sadly, many of those perspectives still linger today. But if we look closer, we'll realize the women of the Bible were far more present than it first appears. They were mothers, prophetesses, judges, warriors, and advisors to kings. Over time, though, their voices were muffled by traditions that prioritized male narratives. Powerful female biblical figures were forgotten in pews and study halls, only brought up as examples of obedience or submission. And hey race, what's fascinating, even with so little visibility, these forgotten women of the Bible often demonstrated a deeper, more unwavering faith than the men around them. While the so-called heroes hesitated, they stood firm, guided by discernment and a powerful connection to God. Yet instead of being celebrated as the powerful women of the Bible they were pushed to the margins of the story. That's not coincidence, that's centuries of erasure. Much of that erasure also came from how theology was developed. For centuries, it was led almost exclusively by men, priests, rabbis, scholars who, even with good intentions, carried their own cultural and social lenses. The result? A lack of focus on the influential women of the Bible, as if their spiritual impact was always secondary. When in truth, many were right there behind the scenes, or even on the battlefield. This isn't about blaming the past. It's about revisiting the story with greater care and justice. The first step is to acknowledge that, yes, there was a silencing. And that silence still echoes today when churches overlook these stories, or when female leadership in the Bible is treated as a rare exception. But hey race, the good news, we can change that. All we have to do is listen. Because these voices, though ancient, still have so much to teach us. Let's start with Abigail, one of the wisest women in the Bible, who saved her people with intelligence and diplomacy. Her husband, Nabal, acted arrogantly toward David and put everyone at risk. But she stepped in with humility, wisdom, and strategy, bringing provisions, calming the fury of the future king, and preventing a massacre. Not only did she save lives, she earned David's respect and later became his wife. A true biblical heroine, forgotten by history, but vital to Israel's destiny. Then there's Deborah, a name that shatters the myth that women in the Bible were never leaders. She was a judge, the only woman among all the judges of Israel, and a prophetess. She led the people with wisdom and courage, guiding a decisive battle against the Canaanites. Alongside Barak, She became a direct instrument of God to bring victory. While many men hesitated, Deborah moved forward confident and bold. One of the most powerful women in the Bible, no doubt. Now take a deep breath because Jael's story is like something out of a thriller. She wasn't a leader or a warrior by title, but she was strategic like few others. When enemy commander Sisera fled and took refuge in her tent, she welcomed him, then drove a tent peg through his skull while he slept. Yes, you heard that right. Her action sealed Israel's victory. A shocking figure among the forgotten women of the Bible, but one who symbolizes unexpected wisdom and triumph. Huldah might be one of the most overlooked prophetesses in Scripture. In a time when men's words carried all the weight, she was personally consulted by King Josiah. Yes, a king of the Bible sought guidance from a woman. She read and affirmed the book of the law found in the temple, confirmed God's judgment, and guided a spiritual reform that changed Israel's future. Huldah was a prophetic voice, a spiritual authority, a catalyst for transformation. And yet almost no one knows her name. And finally, there's Michal, a woman whose story is marked by love, loyalty, and rejection. The daughter of King Saul and first wife of David, she loved deeply, risking her life to help him escape. But over time, her story was twisted, and she was cast almost as a villain. Michal represents so many Old Testament women who were misunderstood or silenced when they were actually victims of a harsh, unequal system. Her journey still resonates with anyone who's ever been forgotten after giving everything. These women of the Bible were not just characters in an ancient tale. They are living mirrors of choices that still matter today. With wisdom, courage, and faith, they faced challenges that required steel nerves and hearts rooted in God. Abigail teaches us the power of diplomacy, even in chaos. Deborah and Jael show that leadership and bravery have no gender or title. Huldah and Michal remind us that a woman's worth isn't always recognized immediately, but it can still reshape destinies. If you've ever been in a situation where no one seemed to hear you, you're not alone. Many of these strong women of the Bible lived exactly that. They were overlooked, undervalued, but stayed true to who they were. Their faith wasn't flashy, it was forged in silence, waiting, and sometimes pain. But instead of shrinking back, they stepped forward. Instead of staying quiet, they let their actions speak. Deborah judged an entire nation with rare discernment. Jael used what she had to deliver her people. Huldah spoke truth to a king. Michal loved fiercely even when cast aside. They weren't perfect and didn't need to be. What made them extraordinary is that despite their flaws, they chose to stay faithful to what they believed. And that's something any of us can live by. Want to know the secret behind the strength of these women God used? Intimacy with Him. They weren't after fame, titles, or public applause. They were tuned into the voice of God, available for His purpose, and anchored in what they knew was right. Their spirituality was active, living, and practical. It wasn't about the spotlight, it was about impact. And that's the kind of faith that transcends time and religious tradition. So next time you hear a Bible story, ask yourself, where are the women in this narrative? Because chances are they're there, just hidden between the lines. And when we start noticing them, we discover there's so much more to learn, not just about the past, but about ourselves. So which of their stories do you see yourself in? The question remains, why were these women who shaped the Bible erased over time? The answer isn't simple, but it starts with context. In a patriarchal society, women's roles were confined to the home or silence. Even when they did something extraordinary, it was more convenient to forget them quickly. And that pattern lasted for centuries. As time passed, male-dominated theology shaped a Bible narrative centered on male protagonism. Men wrote it, interpreted it, and taught it, which influenced the focus of the stories. Slowly, influential women of the Bible were reduced to a handful of names like Mary, Esther, or Eve, while countless other heroines were left behind. Not because they weren't important, but because they weren't given space. Another factor is how traditional Bible studies tend to focus on political, military, or priestly achievements, areas that were, back then, mostly male-dominated. But that doesn't mean women lacked influence. Quite the opposite. They advised kings, shaped battles, and led spiritual reforms. But because they didn't hold official titles, their stories didn't make the sermon headlines. There's also a historical resistance to female leadership in the Bible, especially in communities that still don't accept women preaching or leading today. Acknowledging these figures would mean opening a door many prefer to keep shut. But times have changed and are still changing. More people are turning their eyes to these forgotten stories, questioning what's been left out, and searching for a faith that's fuller, fairer, and more inspiring. And yes, part of this forgetting is cultural too. There's a lack of representation in churches, seminaries, books, even films. It's as if these women of the Old Testament were secondary when, in reality, they were central. Thankfully, that's beginning to shift. And every time we remember, honor, and study these stories, we're not just honoring the past, we're giving voice to those who always had something to say. After all that, it's hard not to get emotional, isn't it? These forgotten women of the Bible were never just background characters. They were key players behind the scenes of sacred history. Jael's courage, Abigail's wisdom, Deborah's leadership, Huldah's spiritual authority, and Mitchell's wounded heart show just how deeply rooted female strength has always been, even when the world tried to deny it. These stories still speak to us today. And now that you know them, how can you not want to know more? Maybe you'd never even heard of them. Maybe you thought there were only 2 or 3 important women in the Bible. But today showed otherwise, and this is only the tip of the iceberg. With every new reading, we find more women used by God, stories that defy what religious tradition too often ignored. The silence around them doesn't make them less important, it just shows how much more we need to listen. So now it's your turn. Which of these women deserves a video of her own? Comment below. Your voice might shape the next episode. Do you connect more with Deborah's unshakable faith? With Mitchell's quiet pain? With Jael's fierce boldness? We want to hear from you. And more than that, share this video with someone who needs to know these stories. So many people have never heard any of this, and it could change their faith completely. And if you found this meaningful, get ready, our next video will dive even deeper. We'll talk about the women who were used by God to change the fate of kings. That's right, women who influenced political decisions, prophesied directly to the throne, and altered the destiny of entire nations. Spoiler, not all of them are remembered as heroes, but every single one had a divine purpose. So make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because what's coming will surprise you even more. The Bible is full of overlooked stories, and we're here to bring them to light. After all, when we listen to these forgotten voices, it's not just history that becomes more vibrant, it's our faith that gets renewed. Throughout this video, we've walked silent paths. Paths where women of the Bible walked with faith, intelligence, and courage, even when no one cheered for them. Even when their names were barely mentioned. And maybe that is the most powerful part of all this, they didn't need a spotlight to be giants. These forgotten women of biblical history didn't have fame, but they had purpose. And that was enough to change the fate of kings, nations, and faith itself. How many times have you given your all only for no one to notice? How many times did you do the right thing, but it went unseen? These women know that feeling. And still, they chose to keep going, to keep trusting, to keep showing up even when the world told them it wasn't their place. Maybe that's the real lesson here. You don't need recognition to be relevant. You need faith, conviction, and courage. Their story isn't just beautiful, it's urgent. Because today, we're still facing the same silence in churches, families, workplaces, society. Women are still being overlooked, underestimated, pushed aside. But the Bible shouts in silence these women existed. They acted. They prophesied. They led. They saved. And once you know their journeys, you can't see faith the same way again. You realize that God never cared about stereotypes. He always chose willing hearts, even the ones that seemed unlikely to the world. So hey, raise the question, what if it's you? What if God wants to use your life the same way He used Abigail, Huldah, or Deborah? Would you be available? Because maybe He already is. Maybe just like them, your impact hasn't been fully recognized yet. And that's okay. Because when God chooses you, He sustains you. He honors in the right time. Your story is still being written. And who says you're not the next chapter? Now tell me in the comments, which of these women touched your heart the most? Who deserves her own video? Let's bring these stories out of the shadows and show that the powerful women of the Bible are still examples of faith, wisdom, and transformation. If this video moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, hit that bell, and stay tuned because in the next episode, we're diving into the lives of women who changed the destiny of kings. The silence is over. Now it's time to give voice to those who always had something to say.